With a 4-year, $140 million extension, the Golden State Warriors have officially locked in Jordan Poole as one of the building blocks of their future. At just age 22, and in his third season, he had an extremely impressive playoff debut that saw him playing a key role for the NBA champions. But just where is he at as a player right now? What are his defining skills and areas for improvement, and just how good can he be? Poole has one of the most effective handles in the NBA, with a unique pairing of length and ball security that allows him to loosen his dribble and exaggerate his movements while remaining in complete control when attacking through traffic or with added defensive pressure. He uses his offhand and shoulders to protect the ball at all times while going to combinations that include crossovers, in and outs, spins, and half spins to break down his defender. It's his agility that makes these moves so lethal. He's got that quick twitch change of direction where he can plant his feet and cut on a whim, which is augmented by his ability to change speeds, stopping and going at will. His first step is impressive. He can explode from a stationary position for blow-bys with some nice utilization of jabs and pivots, but it's his deceleration that impresses me most, just slamming the brakes while somehow maintaining balance. He pairs this functional athleticism with super long strides and improvised creativity on the gather to craft out angles to the rim, where he's a pretty solid finisher. He's really underhand dominant, using tons of scoops, reverses, and up and unders that allow him to get the ball off the floor quickly with some nice layup versatility. This helps him adjust his shot well and feather in some tough finishes, but also makes things a bit more difficult when trying to score through rim protectors. He has a few counters for working around this, the first being his use of the floater. This allows him to get the ball over shot blockers and still do damage even when he can't get deep into the paint, which was a huge go-to for him throughout the entirety of Golden State's championship run. He also makes great use of his length to get around defenders in the paint, going to Euro steps, long strides across the lane, or just maximizing that reach by gathering the ball further away and scooping it at a hidden angle. Then there's that ability to stop on a dime, often getting into the lane, coming to an abrupt halt, and pivoting back for short mid-range jumpers. Despite not having a ton of size, he's pretty good at dealing with contact, not only on the drive but also when finishing, and he seemingly put on a bit more weight heading into the season, which should make him even more effective in these spots. His free throw rates were about average over the last couple seasons, and with a league-leading 92.5% from the line, defenses have to avoid sending him there as much as possible. With all of that being said, it's on the perimeter where Poole does most of his damage as a scorer, more specifically through his pull-up shooting. He's got a super fluid transfer of energy from a live dribble to the shooting pocket, which allows him to pull the trigger at a moment's notice, whether that means coming off a screen with a tight window of opportunity or in transition before a defense can fully recover. This also means he can shoot off of step backs or side steps and when off balance, again using his lengthy handle and quick changes of direction to create space. And just the smallest separation is all he needs due to his extraordinary range and ability to hit these shots with a high degree of difficulty. I will say he has a tendency to rely on these tougher looks a bit too much, and cutting out some of those early shot clock or transition bombs could make him a more efficient shooter. His willingness to take these shots, though, does pose a constant threat on the defense and makes him a nightmare to cover in the pick and roll. He forces bigs to play near or at the level of the screen, which puts them in a more vulnerable position to deal with his slashing. He'll often utilize throw-ahead dribbles and crossovers to build up steam downhill, and loves to reject the screen with some lethal head fakes. This dual threat of pull-up shooting and dribble penetration led to him generating 1 point per possession on these plays, landing him in the 89th percentile among all players with at least 100 attempts. Of course, this type of on-ball efficiency and diverse shot creation yields some added defensive attention, opening up opportunities as a playmaker. When coming off of screens and forcing those higher coverages, he's really good at pocket bounce passes to the roller, and isn't at all afraid to take risks and shovel these through tight windows, often splitting the two defenders. He's most comfortable using just one hand to make these deliveries, but because he's also phenomenal with his left, there's still a decent amount of versatility. You'll see the same thing when slinging the ball to shooters all over the court, typically going to baseball passes to add some range and velocity, although he can occasionally put a bit too much on it. He's great at keeping his dribble live and hunting for high leverage opportunities when working near the paint, and in the Warriors' motion-heavy offense, this means finding cutters for dump-offs or laydowns. Take this play for example. Poole attacks in isolation, and with a simple dribble combo is able to get his man on the hip. In 2 giant strides, he gets into the restricted area and slams the brakes, leaving not 1, but 2 defenders flying past him on block attempts. He pivots back and quickly leaves it for the now wide open cutter. His vision isn't yet all the way there. He does miss some openings that higher level passers would anticipate, but if he sees a potential high value shot, he'll do what it takes to get the ball there, which is critical in developing as a lead creator. This is a role that in just year 3 he already looked really good at. In just over 1,300 minutes with Steph Curry off the floor, he put up roughly 26 and 6 per 75 possessions. He did turn the ball over a bit more than usual, but remained a mildly efficient scorer, while the Warriors were a net positive. While many would look to this production as a sign that he should be on the ball more, or that he's held back by the team-oriented system in Golden State, I would argue that what he's capable of doing off the ball and how he fits next to these other ball handlers makes him so much more dynamic as an offensive player. He's a very active mover, using those sharp cuts and changes of direction to free himself from chasing defenders when relocating or running around screens, where he's an awesome shooter. He leverages the gravity of this movement extremely well with quick passing decisions to slipping rollers and cutters, almost like a mini Steph, or by attacking quickly off the catch as another way to create space on the perimeter or get all the way into the paint. He's also a willing screener himself and has great instincts for when to slip, making him a seamless plug into NBA history's most effective motion offense. With Poole on the floor next to Curry, the Warriors had a 119.3 offensive rating and outscored their opponents by nearly 14 points, showing that he could shift down to that secondary role and still elevate the offense to truly impressive heights. Now, the same can't exactly be said for the defensive end, but before we get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to Basketball Index for helping with this analysis and the making of this video. If you're not familiar with the site, they provide tons of statistical measurements, tools, and easily accessible graphics to further guide your understanding of the sport. They offer talent grades on pretty much any aspect you can think of, and through their player profiles tab, I can easily compare them to other players around the league. Using Jordan Poole's 3-point shooting as an example, on this page I'm presented with various metrics detailing his ability to create and make these shots, along with how he stacks up against his peers. This is just one of the many useful tools found on the site that help guide me and many others through their analysis, and by signing up with the code VENUE30, you can get 30% off your first month subscription. I'll leave a link in the description below for anyone interested in signing up, and with that being said, let's take a look at Jordan Poole's defense. Because Golden State is just so good on that end of the floor, it's not as problematic as it otherwise would be in most situations, but as we saw during various points in the playoffs, it did limit his minutes. His lack of size is pretty apparent, often getting bumped downhill or in the post and not holding his position or absorbing that contact well, although he does like to play physical, which with the added strength could help a lot. The problem is he doesn't make up for this lack of a large frame by moving well laterally. Ball handlers are still able to get around him or catch him off balance, and he doesn't have the athleticism to recover. He does have decent hands that when paired with his length allow him to offer some resistance off the dribble though, and his screen navigation isn't too problematic. With that being said, he's usually just hidden as much as possible, playing a low activity role where he can help and recover with some solid closeouts, although he definitely needs to sharpen up his awareness. His positioning also requires quite a bit of work if he's ever going to contribute on that end. Throughout the postseason, we saw him hunted in screening actions, where they did avoid the switch by having him hedge, but most of the time ball handlers were still able to get that initial dribble penetration due to where he positioned himself. I'm not quite sure how much room for growth there is, both on and off the ball, because he's just so limited, but if he can go from where I view him now as a pretty significant negative to just treading water, I think his versatile offense will be enough to take him to a pretty high ceiling. How good that actually is, only time will tell, but for now I view him as a high-level secondary creator who can shift between roles on and off the ball, allowing him to fit with tons of other talent and making him a perfect guard for Golden State's philosophy. With some added strength, growth as a finisher, playmaker, and more potent shot selection, I feel he could one day develop into that lead creator of the future and one of the better offensive players in all of basketball. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website, podcast, and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Jordan Poole and just how good you believe he is. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.